Thank you, everyone. This is Dana Kelly. I'm the Student Affairs Program Manager for the Office of the State Board of Education. And I get to wear a lot of hats and do a lot of different things that I really enjoy. But one of my favorite responsibilities is working and helping to support our dual credit programs around the state. Knowing what a critical role this plays in helping our pipeline from high school to college and advancing learning for those students that take advantage of advanced opportunities, and particularly dual credit. As Jonathan has mentioned both earlier and at the beginning, this is the start of some ongoing conversations that we want to be having with our dual credit and GEM partners in preparation for kind of a joint session at the April GEM Summit. And so this first one is an intro to the program. And to do this intro, this overview, we have 3 presenters, and today they are going to present each for about 10 minutes on their topic, and then we've saved the remainder of the time to kind of engage with questions from each of you. So if you have questions, put them in the chat or hold them and voice them at the end. Our first presenter today, I'm going to go ahead and introduce all the presenters, and then we'll just let them go at their time. But the first presenter is Fabiola Juarez-Coca, and she's the Director of Concurrent Enrollment at Boise State University. She's been a leader and mentor in dual credit programs in Idaho as well as the nation. In the early 2000s, she was instrumental in convening the leaders of Idaho's dual credit programs to meet on a regular basis. And she's also helped to coordinate and compile and distribute the Idaho's dual credit brochure. Nationally, she served on the board of directors for the National Association of Concurrent Enrollment Partnerships, NACEP, and she has presented and served on panels at numerous NACEP conferences and state conferences here in Idaho. She's followed the history and the development of dual credit in Idaho, and today she's going to provide an overview of dual credit in Idaho. Our next presenter will be Dr. Kathleen McHugh, and Kathleen is the Chief Research Officer for the Office of the Idaho State Board of Education. She is an economist by training and a native Idahoan. The dual credit reports that Kathleen and her team have compiled over the past several years have helped us to understand the strengths and needs of Idaho's dual credit program. Today, Kathleen is going to share some of her findings from the 2020 Idaho Dual Credit Report with an emphasis on how it relates to the GEM offerings and GEM participation. I'll post a link to that report in the chat so you can all have that. And then our final presenter is Dr. Candy Turley-Ames, and she currently serves as the Dean of College of Arts and Letters at Idaho State University. ISU's early college program reports to Candy. And last year, the President's Leadership Council, or I guess a little more than a year ago, the President's Leadership Council tasked Candy with convening a work group to help Idaho presidents prioritize the needs of dual credit statewide. And today, Candy will share with this group the findings and recommendations from this task force. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Fabiola. Fabiola, thank you.
Thank you. And Dana and I have worked together for many, many years, and that was the loveliest introduction, Dana. Thank you. It's fun to talk about something that is so meaningful, impactful, changes generations and generations, like dual credit. So I'm going to summarize 23 years worth of concurrent enrollment in Idaho into a 10-minute presentation. But we have a really good group, and if you ever have questions moving forward, please let us know. Before I begin, I do want to add that I am a high school graduate of tiny little Parma High School, rural school, and this experience, I'm an alum of Boise State. This experience really impacted the way that I choose to run Boise State's concurrent enrollment program, because I see the bigger picture and I see the impact that it makes in our rural schools and urban schools as well, of course. So that's the lens that I look through when I run it. Concurrent enrollment nationwide has been around for many, many years. In Idaho, 23 years. So when concurrent enrollment began in Idaho, it took the best of what was already happening across the United States. And we use the term interchangeably, concurrent enrollment, dual credit. In the early legislation that Idaho drafted, they called it concurrent enrollment. And then through the years, they crossed it out and said dual credit. But nationwide, we tend to call it concurrent enrollment. But think of those terms as interchangeably, first of all, concurrent enrollment, dual credit, but I'll use dual credit because it's shorter. So, so dual credit began back in 1988. 1988 was when initially the real bill started going through the legislature. Senator Bob Nonini is one of the bill sponsors. He's from up north Idaho. So one of the things that they did is they created the program, and then they gave the task to implement it to the Idaho State Board of Education. And under Section 3Y, Advanced Opportunities, there's a set of policies that we follow when we run to help guide Idaho's colleges and universities guide the program. So we were tasked, these colleges and universities, to partner with our local high schools to offer both high school and college credit with approved high school instructors. And in 2005, and again in 2008, the Idaho State Board adopted dual credit standards that were set by the National Alliance of Concurrent Enrollment Partnerships. So NACEP.org, great website to check out. They have these policies, and really it's the framework. If you want to run a quality dual credit program, just follow those policies because they give you the framework, and they look at curriculum, faculty, students, program assessments, program administration, and administration is what I do at Boise State, and program evaluation. And they award an accreditation to institutions that follow these standards. And currently in Idaho, there are 6 public institutions of higher education that hold this accreditation by NACEP: Boise State, Idaho State, University of Idaho, Lewis State Clark College. I'm sorry, let me get this right. Lewis Clark State College. Colleges, because it's important. College of Southern Idaho and College of Western Idaho. So if you look at this, for the size of Idaho to have 6 institutions out of 8 to be accredited, that's amazing. And we are the leaders nationwide because of this. Other states look at us on how to run quality dual credit programs. So once the program's launched, of course, we began working with school administrators. So here's how it initially got started. We started working with high school administrators to find qualified instructors, to identify classes to offer, and to set up these collaborative partnerships. The way that it works is that we offer the classes at the high school. These teachers meet the adjunct teaching requirements that are set by our individual academic departments. So this ownership is held by our academic departments. It's their curriculum, their assessments, their grading, their textbook recommendations, and so forth. They oversee that. So to make sure that this happens, the academic departments designate a faculty liaison who provides mentorship to the high school adjunct instructors, and they oversee the course curriculum and the assessment. And one key point, they also provide professional development, meaningful professional development in the subject matter. So that's what we do on the higher ed side. On the high school side, we target high school students who are sophomore, juniors, and seniors. And we do what I tend to call a soft launch into what it's like to be a college student with this population. So it's kind of cool to start opening the doors in a safe environment like their high schools. The reason we focused on that is because in bringing the university course to the high school, it's because it's more cost effective than having the high school student come to our campus and having them incur travel, work with our schedules, find parking, things like that. It really, the model of working where we bring the class to the student at the high school is more, logistically, it just works a lot better. So Dana was right. In 2007, we held the first Idaho Dual Credit Coordinator Director meeting at Boise State University. And I was really humbled to see that when I called this meeting together, everyone showed up. Like everyone wanted to be able to learn from each other, share best practices, just collaborate. And it's been like that ever since. We share best practices when a new when a new professional comes on board, we help onboard that person, give them the history, just help them troubleshoot issues that may come up. One of the first things we did during that 2007 meeting was we all agreed on a standard rate to charge for dual credit classes. And at the time, the rate per credit ranged between $30 all the way up to $85. And we kind of met in the middle and we settled on $65 a credit statewide. And we figured that would help students and parents understand that this is one program and just continue to build credibility. And so but what we didn't know was that it would stay stuck at $65 a credit forever until 2019, the rate finally increased to $75 a credit. So, and the reason this is important is because that revenue is what we tend to use to run our programs. And talk about unfunded mandates. This was an unfunded mandate that the colleges and universities were told to just go and do it. So anytime I hear about mandates that are funded, my heart it's joyful to hear those words. Yay, because this one wasn't. So, but anyway, it has only increased once, but we're able to run the program at that $75 rate. So those were the early years. We're still learning and growing. And to tell you a little bit about that, there have been various dual credit task forces assembled throughout the years and always focused on program implementation and to come up with best practices recommendations, all of this to advance access for Idaho students. The first task force was organized by the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee, JFAC, back in 2008. With a $50,000 grant that went to the Department of Education. So they brought us all together. We shared best practices, and we've done a couple more since then in 2012 and 2015. So, and these task forces have been really well-intentioned, came up with a lot of good things, and they tend to attract really good stakeholders, high school instructors, parents, higher ed representatives, state board, Department of Ed representatives. So it's been really good. A lot of the time is spent educating, like, this is what it is. This is what we need to do to run a quality program. And then from there, we start asking, what resources do we need to make that happen? One of the things that was identified early on was the per credit rate. It was cost prohibitive for some of our students. Students tended to not have $65. So we ended up missing out on so many of them. One thing that helped alleviate that was the State Board of Education was able to get what's called the College Access Challenge grant. And Dana oversaw that grant. And it was amazing because it really did open the doors to students being able to pay for this. So think of it as a scholarship, but it was a need-based scholarship. Students had to self-report that they were eligible for free or reduced lunch. So again, we were leaving a big chunk of students that were not able to access it because they either made just enough money to not qualify for free and reduced lunch. And so again, it became an issue. Plus, that grant eventually ran out. So then came some legislative support. In the form of Senate Bill 1233, the Advanced Opportunities. This one came, it was kind of interesting how it was launched in 2014. It gave partial payment for high school students to be able to pay for these college credits. It gave high school juniors $200, and then it gave high school seniors $400. Again, a little chunk to pay about, for a part of the cost that was still leaving a lot of students out of the picture. So that bill eventually evolved in 2015 to Senate Bill 1050, Advanced Opportunities. And this was a game changer. Senate Bill 1050 combined a number of little scholarships that the state had into one lump sum for high school students to use. And so it gave high school students a lump sum of $4,125. That's a good amount. That'll pay for a good almost up to 2 years worth of college credits at the $75 rate. So these funds help pay for concurrent enrollment, dual credit classes, AP tests, CTE exams, summer school overload, and the best part is that it's accessible to students, I believe, the summer after their 8th grade. So it starts pretty early. The time that we start seeing this scholarship being used by high school students is when they hit their sophomore, junior, senior year, and they start taking concurrent enrollment classes. So it's kind of, I mean, that was a game changer for sure. So one new development that happened in fall 2021, or this year, because keep in mind that Advanced Opportunity Scholarship was targeted only for public and charter school students. It left out our private school students. And so this year, the legislature came through for them and has given them $750 to help pay for dual credit classes. All the way up, that'll pay for 10 credits. And I work with a couple of private schools. They're really excited about that. And now they feel like they're part of the game as well. But so it's exciting that they do that. So that's kind of what I meant to say and give you an overview about learning and growing. We have some current opportunities to continue to improve the program. That's always ongoing. And that's why it's exciting to have this focus and to be able to share with you about dual credit in the state. So here's some areas that I identified that we can continue to improve on. We need to continue to grow the pool of qualified high school instructors to teach for our programs. That's probably my bottleneck to be able to grow any more. And so in the
Fabiola,
previous, yes.
I'm gonna, because I think some of those may be cross-referenced with Candy's at the end.
Absolutely.
So can we add your recommendations following Candy's, and that way we can, my guess is you'll find there
you'll hit some similarities
between
no, absolutely, absolutely. So that's one of them, and I'm glad we'll continue to talk about that, but not new to Idaho per se. These are the same challenges and opportunities. And I like to think of them as opportunities that our colleagues are seeing across the United States, not just in Idaho. But one of the exciting things that I can tell you is that our faculty liaison really are the partners that make this program focus on the quality, and really we couldn't do it without them. When you see me as director for concurrent enrollment, you see Karina Smith, my assistant director, and then through the other institutions, we're the team that helps support the faculty liaisons in our institutions and our high school instructors, which in turn then we assist the students and parents. So it is a collaborative team effort. And what I love about this program is that we're the bridge that connects secondary to higher ed. We work together and we continue to improve education, K through 16. So that's what I have. I'm sure we'll have questions later on. So I'll stop here and then we'll address those towards the end. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Fabiola. We appreciate you and appreciate the overview of the history and all the great things that has occurred in Idaho over time. We're going to transition now to Dr. Kathleen McHugh. Kathleen, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to go over the dual credit report. I have put a link to that in the chat, and it's a lengthy report, and she's not going to be able to cover the whole thing in 10 minutes, but she will be able to, I think, give you an overview of how it impacts GEM. So Kathleen, take it away.
Hi, and thank you very much for having me present. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I think I was having some issues earlier. I'm assuming everybody can see that. And as Dana pointed out, I'm going to move fast. So if you need me to slow down, just, I don't know, I guess put a comment in. And Dana, would you let me know?
Yes, I will. I'm kind of making a list of the comments for the question session at the very end, so I'll keep doing that.
So this report was a report I completed last, I think it finally got done in February, because it was a report we had not done before, because we took data from the Advanced Opportunities Program and tied it to our post-secondary data system, so that we were able to track not only dual credit students, which we usually do with our post-secondary data systems, but dual credits paid for through the Advanced Opportunity Program. So I think that you guys probably already know this. So today I'm just going to talk about the demographics of the participants of the AO program. And then the credits earned in GEM courses. I will try to keep most time for that, the grades earned, and then the college outcomes. So this is a graph showing on the left-hand side, it's the number of students that we matched to the AO records from each institution. And then on the right-hand side, those were the total students who were reported by the institutions as being dual credit students. So there are students who take dual credits at the institutions who are taking it not through the AO program, but the vast majority are taking it through the AO program. So the first question I looked at was, do the AO participants reflect the statewide student population? I looked at economically disadvantaged, gender, and then race, ethnicity. And the numbers that are highlighted in red are those that are the differences that are statistically significant and where the group is underrepresented. So economically disadvantaged students are underrepresented in AO dual credit, very underrepresented in advanced placement, and overrepresented in CTE exams. And males are underrepresented in all categories as well. And then the students tend to be more white except for CTE exams. And I think less likely to be Hispanic for dual credit and AP. But what I did next is I said, okay, that is asking whether or not the AO students reflect the state distribution. Do they reflect the schools where AO programs, do they reflect the schools in which the AO programs are offered? So different schools may offer AP, different schools may offer dual credit, different types of schools may offer CTE. So this is looking at whether or not the demographics of a particular school reflects their underlying student population. So once I controlled for the school, the economically disadvantaged for the dual credit impact went away. So within a school, there's no difference between a not economically disadvantaged student and an economically disadvantaged student in terms of their AO participation in dual credit. There is a difference in AP. And again, students economically disadvantaged are more likely to take CTE exams. And I'm going to move on just to keep moving. So the next question is, what types of courses were taken in dual credit? So 75% of the credits that were earned are in GEM courses. The other ones are in academic non-GEM courses or a 4% in CTE courses. However, this is different across the different institutions. So the four-year institutions tend to have more academic non-GEM courses or credits earned, while the two-year institutions, except CSI, the two-year institutions tend to have more GEM courses credits earned. The difference, what I want to call out is CSI kind of looks more like the four-year institutions and LC State looks more like the two-year institutions. So it's not all four-year and not all two-year, just in general. So I don't know how much you want me to go into this. I guess oral communication is by far the least likely to have credits earned in it. The other, probably the most popular GEM courses, at least for the two-year schools, are in the social behavioral. And then for some of the schools in then it differs between the next one, between math and then written communication. And then the four-year institutions, they tend to be more, well, LC State offers a lot of written communication credits compared to the rest of the four-year institutions. And then a lot of the, and less humanistic and artistic ways of knowing. Okay, so what grades are earned in these courses? This is a good outcome. over 90% of students in all courses earn a C+ or C- or better, including passes. So the vast majority of these students are taking these courses and being successful in them. And then I look by the different types of GEM courses. Oral communication had the lowest rate at 91%, but that's still a pretty good rate. I wish I was successful at 91% of the things that I did. So this, we're moving on to looking at differences in college attendance rates by the number of dual credits earned at high school graduation. So we took each high school graduate and we counted up how many dual credits were earned in the public system, because that's the only system we have access to. And we categorized them as earning no dual credits, and then 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 19, or 20 or more. And so there's two trends that I want to point out. One, the go-on rates increase as the number of dual credits earned increase. And the go-on rates have decreased for all groups over time. So I think my explanation for this is as we've opened up dual credit to all different types of students who may have been less likely to begin with to go on to college have taken advantage of the dual credit program. And they've experienced some college, and they may have been less likely to begin with. And they may have, through the dual credits, they may have found that they may have decided that college wasn't for them. They may have just have other constraints on why they didn't go on. But it's not so much that students who earn dual credits are decreasing in the likelihood of going on. It's just we've changed the population of students who get to earn dual credits. And Fabiola, you're one of the faces that I can see. So does that make sense?
It does make sense, but there's a lot of other factors for why they don't end up going.
Yes. Yes, and we know nothing about why they don't go on. It's just before, when students were paying for some of the credits themselves, it is likely you would not choose to earn dual credits unless you knew you had a very strong probability of going on. So as you open it to students who were perhaps had a baseline of being less likely to go on, then you wouldn't be surprised to see that go on rates decrease for students who earn dual credit. So this is the students who earn dual credits. Do they complete their degree in less time than students who did not earn dual credit? We only have data on this for the 4-year degrees on students who earn dual credits prior to the new Advanced Opportunities Program, which means that there's going to be a lot of sample selection bias in these results. So again, these students were bearing some of the costs themselves. So it could have been that they were more likely to go on and complete early, even in the absence of dual credit. So in order to understand the impact of dual credit, we would have to do more in-depth statistical modeling, and also wait for the students who have had all 4 years of the program. I think this is the first year they would have graduated. So as you can see, students who earn dual credits are more likely to graduate on time, and the more dual credits they earn, the more likely they are to graduate.
I think this is really important in light of some of the conversations that I've been hearing over the past few days, in terms of they're probably indicating that students are not going on to college. And again, you know, we're seeing that they are, and those that have more dual credit tend to graduate on time, whether it's at a 2-year institution or a 4-year institution. And so I think, you know, this messaging is also important to start making sure that we get out there as well.
And this shows the same thing, but for associate's degree. And I guess when I look at it, the students who graduated in, well, again, we don't have data on all 4 years, students who experience the AO program in its current form for all 4 years. So again, this probably suffers from some sample selection in that students who are represented in these different groups paid for some of the dual credits themselves, and they may have been more likely to complete on time. But it's still, as Dana said, it is still a very good story that students who go on, students who earn dual credits are more likely to go on, and they're more likely to complete on time than students who do not. I made it. 10 minutes, Dana.
All right, I'm going to ask, we've got a lot of great questions that are going on in the chat, and I want to give our next presenter time, and so then we'll come back to the questions at the end. So at this point, I would like to turn the time over to Dr. Candy Turley Ames, who, again, as I mentioned in the introduction, was tasked by the presidents of all of our Idaho's institutions to work with another task force work group. I can't remember what we called it, Candy, and then to kind of come up with some recommendations. And she's going to talk with us about those recommendations, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me today. Can you see my screen? Excellent. So what I hope to do today in the few minutes that I have is talk a little bit about the President's Leadership Council Dual Enrollment Working Group. And there's actually been 2 working groups. So what we were initially charged with, or what I was initially charged with, let's see if I can make it advance, was to try to figure out exactly the thing that Kathleen mentioned. You know, how do we leverage dual enrollment to improve the go-on rate? How do we create that transition, if you will, from high school to college, university setting seamlessly? And what obstacles do we need to actually remove so that students can do that efficiently? And then, of course, since the state is investing quite a bit of money per student into dual enrollment, or the opportunity for dual enrollment, can we also decrease time to graduation? So those were really the 2 initial charges that we were given as a group. We had the first working group that came together, looked at Kathleen's data, looked at the history of dual enrollment in the state. Many of us attended conferences on a national level to get a sense of where Idaho is in that game. And we came up with really 4 recommendations that were taken back to the presidents. First, and one that we've heard about a lot, not just from this particular group, was the need for a statewide transcription service. As many of you know, students take dual enrollment from lots of different institutions, sometimes simultaneously, and students have a hard time tracking where their credits are coming from. We also recognized, as Fabiola mentioned, that we really want qualified teachers teaching dual credit at every institution. And for a number of reasons, we're seeing fewer opportunities or fewer teachers able to do so. So create some kind of training program that would allow teachers to earn the advanced degrees necessary to be able to do this really well. And then try to develop some kind of coordinated professional advising system so that students can have professional advising from dual enrollment into the university setting, and end up going where they are best suited to go, that there aren't really turf wars associated with this. And then finally, and this was actually the one recommendation that at the time, primarily I think because of COVID, was not supported by the President's Leadership Council, and we still recommend revisiting. And that was to establish some kind of centralized statewide compensation system for dual credit teachers. And I'll explain why in a moment. So recommendation 1 was to develop a statewide transcription service for students. And again, primarily because students are taking dual credit from numerous institutions, keeping track of where they took those dual credits, making sure that they get transcripts from all of our institutions so that they can apply to college can be very cumbersome. And so what we were hoping was to reinforce this initiative, this desire to have a centralized transcription service that would really facilitate high school students going on to college. That effort was taken out of our hands and is currently being discussed and addressed, so we believe, by URSA and by CAP. Recommendation 2 And we spent a lot of time on this one, and this is actually one of the few budget proposals that I believe is in the governor's hands, was to create a dual credit teacher training scholarship program. So in other words, provide some incentives for secondary education teachers to pursue advanced degrees, making sure that even students who are in very rural areas have qualified teachers to provide the dual credit opportunities that the state has financially supported. Recognizing as well, you probably heard this a lot, that in the state we have a lot of high school teachers retiring, and some of our best dual credit teachers are retiring. So making sure we prime that pipeline effectively. And we recognize that there were two programs, again, based upon an unfunded mandate, trying to create this pipeline and using those two institutions as models for what the state might be able to do to facilitate this. So the proposal that came forward from the initial working group was approved and supported by the presidents at the President's Leadership Council. A budget was put together and it's being considered by the governor right now. At this point, essentially what would happen if supported financially is that teachers would ask to be a part of this dual enrollment training scholarship program, where a limited number of credit hours would be supported for them each year in exchange for them being able to teach and be mentored in the discipline for which they want to earn the advanced degree. In this case, the teachers would also be able to be paid for their dual enrollment instruction, the extra compensation that they receive. And because we really want to be collaborative, teachers were not contractually obligated to work as a dual enrollment teacher for a specific school. So really making sure that we were creating a pipeline for all of Idaho. Recommendation 3 was to develop a coordinated professional advising system. And we've spent a tremendous amount of time and actually some really great collaborative work with some of the individuals who are in this room right now. We have representation on this group, the second working group, advising individuals who do professional advising and work with dual enrollment programs at the major institutions, at the community colleges, at some of the in-state private institutions that offer dual enrollment. We have representatives from the board office as well as from the Department of Education. And what we recognized was at college level advising, as much as we want and encourage high schools to do this, that it really is the responsibility of the four-year institutions, right? Especially if we want students to go on. So we really had to give a lot of thought to how do we facilitate that transfer? How do we exchange a student who is just taking a couple classes, trying to understand what college is and if it's a good fit for them, to really making sure they're on the path to being able to finish a 2 or 4 year degree. One of the things that we learned is inadequate advising can really discourage students, and it can really negatively impact, as part of our charge, time to degree completion. So what we came up with is this incredible module, and I really do have to have a shout out to Brock at the Department of Education. We decided that there really was this important cutoff point at about 15 dual credits, where the students have to go in and accept their advanced opportunities money. And we're going to actually put a portal, a tutorial, if you will, attached to that approval, where they would learn a lot about what is typical university language and terminology. So what's the difference between a bachelor's degree and associate's degree? What is a GEM stamp course? What's gen ed versus elective? All those things that we assume that students know and that we talk about, at least I do at ISU every single day, that they don't really know. So really teaching them about the language so that they can be effective in going on to college, but also it asks them a series of questions about what institutions they're working with, where they want to go to college upon graduation. Do they have an institution that they've taken most of their credits from? So a series of questions that actually helps them to identify a good fit for an advisor, in a professional advisor within a given program. And they will have that information at the end of completing this module. And then our fourth and final recommendation that again has not yet been supported by the President's Leadership Council, and I still would advocate for, is establishing some kind of centralized statewide compensation system for all dual enrollment teachers. So institutions really do vary on whether they compensate teachers in the high schools by the number of students in a classroom or with a flat stipend. And we do think that this difference in pay can lead to some not so great incentives, especially if we're talking about academic integrity, and teachers at times maybe course shopping or being reinforced, if you will, for having more students in a classroom than maybe is safe or is best practices. We also recognize that some institutions have a hard time supporting and paying for dual credit teachers in rural areas if there's not enough students to participate. So those students often have unequal access to dual enrollment and to usage of their advanced opportunities funding. And in some cases in the state, there are some teachers who do it and the money goes to a central pool for their institution, for their high school, and they don't receive extra compensation for what some would argue is extra work. So those are the 4 recommendations that we made. We have pretty much completed our work on 2 and 3, which was really our biggest, I think, contribution, is really working on a teacher waiver program so that we have qualified teachers available in the state to provide the kind of instruction that we want students to receive and to make sure that they are well prepared for going on to college. And secondly, really working together to coordinate as a team across the state, some advising, collaboration, and a module that will help students also be better prepared. And we'll hope to take up this issue about teacher pay in maybe a future working group. So I'm happy to answer questions as well. And thank you for letting me share what we've been doing.
Candy, thank you so much. Fabiola and Kathleen as well for all of your contributions. I want to make sure that we provide opportunity for folks to ask questions, but I think I'm going to go ahead and start with some that came up in the chat while the presentations were going on. Fabiola, I'm going to rely on you because you're younger than me and you have a better memory. And I can probably answer some of these, but I will have more confidence if you either have my back or answer them for me. The first question, the first 3 questions were kind of related, and that was, how are the faculty facilitators? And I think at some schools we call these faculty liaisons. Sometimes they're called faculty mentors. So at your campus, it may be, you may hear some of those terms interchangeably. But how are the college faculty facilitators or mentors, et cetera, financially supported for their work? And does this vary by college? And then in addition, are there supports in the form of workload adjustments for faculty folks? And does faculty facilitation liaison work count towards P&T, which I think I know tenure is there, and I don't know what the promotion and tenure, sorry, I'm struggling with that. So in general, I'm just gonna jump in there and then have Fabiola and maybe even Candy jump in with some additional support, but it does vary by college. We do not, so many things related to dual credit are vary by college. And we're trying really hard, and we have been for many years, to look at those things that could be kind of system-wide approach, and the dual credit fee is one of those. But many of your colleges are structured and staffed differently, and so that factors into this as well. So I'm going to just say, yes, it varies by college, but Fabiola and Candy, maybe you can give some examples of what is done at your campus. And then we will also probably want to capture these questions into one of our future work sessions as well, so we can elaborate more on what's happening around the state. So Fabiola and Candy, do y'all want to jump in?
I can jump in, and I can tell you that faculty liaison really are the key to making a successful dual credit program. We do pay them a supplemental stipend for the overload work they take on. And they go through the process of approving new instructors, and then once that instructor is approved, providing academic oversight during the school year, they develop really strong relationships with these high school instructors. It's a collaborative partnership. Our faculty are pretty wonderful. They sometimes accept the stipend, either a supplemental salary, or they say, put it in this account. I'm going to use it for research and travel to conferences. Some departments say, put it in this account. We're going to use these funds for half for the work we do, and half for student scholarships within our department. So I let them do whatever is best for their program. One key thing that these faculty liaisons have realized is that concurrent enrollment, dual credit can be a really good tool for student recruitment into their departments. They pick their best department representative that will go to do classroom site visits and interact with the students, tell them about their department and potentially recruit them. So that's how we do it. But you're right, it's for most institutions across Idaho, this is above and beyond what these faculty already do. Some of them, when they provide professional development, it can count towards this community outreach, and it can help when they apply for tenure because they can show that they've done professional development in the content area for high school teachers and how they continue to share their knowledge. So we have had some of that, and I encourage them to do it. But that's it.
Yeah, and I would say at Idaho State University, it's very similar. And in terms of tenure promotion, certainly we recognize it as service. And so we talk a lot about how that's really critical service. And Fabiola is actually is totally spot on in that when we have a great liaison, a university instructor who's working closely with a teacher. And again, it's contracted in terms of what they need to do to fulfill that responsibility. What we see are many more students interested in going on because not only does, they have contact with a great high school teacher, dual enrollment teacher, but that teacher is often usually talking about the relationship in the institution that they're working with.
Okay, and I think this will help us to inform some of our future sessions on those relationships and that mentor role. I know we have a planned session on onboarding, and certainly that mentor role is key in the onboarding of new high school teachers. Textbooks costs associated with dual credit. Textbooks still are covered in a variety of ways. Anyway, textbooks may sometimes be the responsibility of the student. We have encouraged a lot of our dual credit teachers to kind of look at what's available through OER, and so many of our schools have done that as well. In some cases, our institutions will provide a classroom set of textbooks. I know that when we had the CACG grant, that was one of the ways that we use some of those funds. Were providing a classroom set for really high dollar textbooks that were necessary for, typically it was language or sometimes science courses. So textbooks are kind of all over the board, but textbook costs are another one of those costs that prevent students sometimes the financial impact of textbooks, like it affects our regular students, also affects our dual credit students. In some, but very, very limited cases, the high schools provide the textbooks, but that's very, very, very limited. Fabiola, do you want to jump in on anything else on that, or did I cover it all right? You
did. I know I can tell you that it's being able to use a university textbook is really key. It's kind of, think of it as a metric that we can use to say, yes, this is a college level course. Not only is your instructor meeting the adjunct teacher requirements, but also the textbook is a university textbook. And it's important to say, look, you're using the same biology book that our students are using at the university campus. The cool thing too is that there's some really cool teacher resources through the publishers that then the instructors can tag onto on developing exams, supplemental teaching materials that are available online. So there's good support for them as well. But when I buy textbooks for our teachers, I do tell them that to please use them 2 to 3 years, because that's kind of the cycle that we go. And our academic departments are supportive of that. They don't expect me to provide the textbooks on an annual basis like we do with university students. For the high schools, we do have a little bit of a longer lifespan because of the cost, but it's a great investment, and I'm happy to do it.
So the next question I want to jump into real quick is we had a question on the funding, the $4,125 in advanced opportunity funding. Who is it available to? and is it need-based? And then we have a supplemental question that came in regarding what those funds can be used for. So the Advanced Opportunities Funding, or AO funding, is available to all public high school students around the state, and it can be used for dual credit. It can be used for exams now. It can be used for some workforce development. It can be used for advanced placement exams. It can also be an IB exams, and it can also be used for technical competency credit. The majority of it is spent on dual credit, and currently it is not available to be spent for textbooks. Fabiola mentioned in her presentation that while homeschool students in the past have had to be affiliated with a public high school in order to participate in the 4125 funds, they, along with private school students, will have limited access to a lot less amount through this new bill, and we're still waiting to see how that rolls out. The next question that we had, I think, is one that we kind of have planned for some follow-up on evaluation that in one of our upcoming sessions. But the question is, do we have data in the grades to follow courses for these students? For example, a DFW rate in Math 175 for students who take Math 170 as dual credit, etc. And Candy, I don't think you've done that with math at ISU yet, but you have looked at English and in terms of looking at how students who took dual credit did when they came to the campus into the next course. So do you want to talk briefly about that, and then we'll add this into a further session?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And we actually have done it with math as well, but with a much smaller sample size. So what we have found is that students who have taken English 1101 as a dual enrollment student from various high schools and through different institutions that are serving as the liaison, right? That when they take English 1102, at least at Idaho State University, that those students pass. The pass rate is incredibly high, actually higher than the pass rate for the students who take English 1101 from our own faculty. However, we're really sure that there is a selection process, right? So students who are well academically prepared, planning to go to college, they're taking it as soon as they can. And that is not in any way holding them back when they take English 1102 when they come to campus. So that was really interesting. And we looked at students' grade point average. So we do know that the students who are taking English 1101 on our regular campus, that those students have a lower GPA than the ones who are taking it dual enrollment through all of your institutions. So that was really important information. We do have a little bit of data on math. Math has been a little bit harder because of some changes with math pathways, but we are finding that students who have taken a prereq for their desired course do indeed perform well in the next course in the sequence if they took the first course in a sequence via dual enrollment in the high school.
So several of our institutions kind of do that on institutional follow-up on particular courses. I know Boise State has done that in the past. I'm not sure if Kathleen's work gets down to the course, the following course. But we do have a planned session on kind of the data research. We'll probably look at what ISU has done so that institutions can try to replicate that on their own campus, to see that methodology so we can look at it. In general, what I hear from our institutions is that their dual credit students typically perform very well when they go on. And as Candy mentioned, that's probably because many of our students that are advantaging themselves of this dual credit money in high school are probably those that they and their families may have already had their eye on college, and they're doing well. And in order to participate in dual credit, students have to have meet a minimum kind of GPA or have the recommendation of someone at their high school and the approval of the college. So, there are some gateways, if you will, for participation, and that probably does pre-select students for success in many ways. So Kathleen, we have some questions here on the go-on rate. oh wait, yeah. For the go on rate, is this specifically for the following year, or does it look at 2 years later? And I'm not sure what Kathleen has looked at last time. I know that we're working right now on a dual credit study, and we're looking at high school graduates who graduated in the spring who enrolled directly into the fall, the next term, and then we're looking at fall to spring retention. We know that there are other ways to look at it, but that's what we've looked at. Kathleen, do you want to jump in and talk about that one real quick?
Yeah, and I was just looking at my report to see what I presented today was just the fall immediate, but we do track fall immediate, and then usually we just skip to 3-year go on rates because that allows students who went on any sort of religious mission to return. And I'm not sure what I did in the report. So
take a closer look at that report, and then I'll mark this question so that we can try to address the answer more fully in a subsequent session. I'm going to jump on. We have we're not going to get to all the questions in the 3 minutes we have remaining, but we will get to them all, at least in some subsequent reports. But there was one question here that are there any incentives to economically disadvantaged students who earn dual credit to go on to a post-secondary program? Some of that funding follows the students once it goes to college. So no, the funding in terms of the 4125, the advanced opportunities, is specifically intended for that, those advanced opportunities, and it is not eligible to be following. I don't see that happening, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other resources available. There are several of our schools that are seeking to look for those students who have taken dual credit and then provide the scholarship for them. The state has a program that kind of gives a scholarship for students that have taken dual credit. It does not look specifically at the economically disadvantaged. It looks at that participation there. And the other thing that I wanted to address was another question that talks about the largest schools and maybe have highest percentages of schools that go on. I just want to make sure that this group understands that students are really not the drivers in dual credit participation. And we often think, why are they taking dual credit from so many campuses? Well, they have to take what's available at high school. And we have high schools that are 100% supportive of marrying sort of the opportunities that are available at their high school with their with what's available at participating colleges. We have other local control decisions that say, we want to be an AP school, and while we have some dual credit, our focus is on AP. And so if a student is at one of those high schools, and some of those are in our larger areas, they may not have the opportunity to take dual credit. When Kathleen's report talked about, if you look at a school that has dual credit available, you see some diminishing gaps in terms of participation, particularly on the socioeconomic side of things. So our goal to try to minimize that, we think, is have more students participate, but it's probably to have more opportunities for students within their high school to participate. So I want to make sure we think about that. And we are at 1 minute left, and we have some great questions in here. And I will work with Jonathan and our wonderful dual credit teams to marry those into some of the sessions. Please keep the questions coming. I put my email in the chat, and we'll try to make sure that we get those things answered. And I want to take this time to thank the presenters for today, for your expertise and your willingness to jump in and present. And I also want to thank the General Education Committee for wanting to learn more and to know more about dual credit and how dual credit impacts your work. This was came out of several questions from last year's GEM Summit, and we just appreciate being able to partner with you, answering these questions and solidifying our collaboration to move forward.
Dana, can I jump in real quick?
Yes.
I just shared a link to our Go On School dashboard. And the question came up about whether or not students from larger schools were more likely to go on. And there are school-specific go-on rates there for different spans of time. Anyway, if you're interested in go on and how it differs across the state, please dig into that dashboard. And if you have any questions on how to use it, please let me know. There's a lot of good data there.
Thank you, Kathleen. I'd forgotten to mention that, and you're right, that dashboard is a great way to look at your local area as well.